Okay, so if you look at anything on the internet about the Minilogue right now, there's a lot of talk about clicking. Clicking. In fact, people, it's almost all that people seem to want to talk about. Let's explore the clicking. I know there's been a lot of videos where people explored the clicking, but I want to explore the clicking. I want you to explore the clicking with me. And here's how. First of all, here's the click. Okay, yeah. That's obviously not supposed to be there. I mean, the filter's completely closed. We shouldn't be hearing any sounds, but we are. We're hearing this click. But the fact of the matter is, in the point at which you're actually going to be using this synthesizer with the filter far more open, okay, maybe you do want this extremely dark sound that's very quiet. And in that case, yeah, that clicking is there. But if you take this clicking and then you bring it into some sort of reasonable sound producing, we can still hear the clicking, but as you set the envelope for something reasonable, the clicking is gone. And so maybe you have a sound where you have like a negative envelope. But even so, the clicking is hard. I'm having trouble right now making the click happen for you in a sound that's actually a usable sound. And I'm sure people have demonstrated that the clicking could exist in some sort of reasonable sound. But the fact of the matter is, when you take the envelope out of the extreme settings, the click is gone. It's not a deal. But this got me thinking about a much more interesting click. First of all, the click actually sort of, and I've heard people say this, and I've demonstrated it in my videos, you can use it as a sort of attack transient. It can give a sort of nice, pleasing click. The sort of click, I don't know if you've ever played like a Hohner pianette, but it's got these little rubber mallets that sort of pluck tines, and there actually is a little click if you do it right with those. I mean, it's a thing you can actually use. Certainly, it shouldn't be a thing that you have to submit to, but you don't, because you can set the settings so that it doesn't happen. And then it becomes a non-issue. However, attack transients are really cool. And what this synthesizer can do in regard to attack transients is the thing that I haven't seen anybody talk a whole lot about, and they should. And here, we're going to talk about that. Instead of belaboring this ridiculous clicking, quote, issue, unquote, let's talk about something useful. Let's talk about attack transients. Okay. Okay, I have both oscillators set to a sawtooth. They're both happening right now. And they're not perfectly in tune. You can hear them chorusing. Those are VCOs. We're glad to hear that. Okay, so the thing we want to talk about is this synthesizer, and I did talk about this when I talked about the oscillators, but we didn't quite go into the depth that we could have about it in regard to attack transients. Now, what happens when you set a real object to vibrating is the minute you hit it with something, the minute you pluck it with something, the minute you rub something against it, there are a whole bunch of harmonics that happen that die out immediately because they can't complete an entire cycle. But that sound exists for a moment. When you pluck a guitar string, there's a little chick sound, or when you push the bow against the violin string, there's a well, it's obviously not that overt, but you know what I'm saying. With every sound that happens in nature, it's very rare, except for really slowly developing sounds, that you don't have a little burst of harmonics at the beginning of the sound. And a lot of synthesizers, a lot of polyphonic analog synthesizers don't give you an opportunity to really create something like that, except for with the filter, which is such a standard traditional sound that you can find it anywhere. But this synthesizer allows you to create cool little attack transients for your sounds. Here, let me show you how. The trick is down here with the pitch envelope. I am a huge fan of pitch envelopes in analog synthesizers that are directed towards, pitch envelopes that are in analog synthesizers. So let's listen. Obviously, that's not an attack transient. That is an envelope shaping the pitch of the second oscillator. And it's not doing what I'm talking about, but we can make it so it actually is. Okay, so there's no envelope right there, right? Here's Here's just a little bit of pitch envelope. Okay, it's a little bit wide, so let's make a better pitch envelope for it. Do you hear the punch that's been added here? Let's take the second oscillator out so you can hear. There's just your standard static sawtooth, but when we have that pitch envelope with this envelope setting directed to the second oscillator, and just to the slight amount, you get this. There's a little added punch, a little added sound to it. And you hear this sort of thing a lot in digital synthesizers, but relatively rarely in analogs. And you can play with it. Let's play with it a little bit. By really turning up the intensity, you get a little swip noise at the beginning. And you know, you might say, well, big deal. But no, that's really an interesting thing that you can do with a synthesizer that you can't do with, for example, and I'm sorry to pick on the Juno 6, but you can't do that with a Juno 6 or a lot of other polyphonic analogs. And, you know, we can shape what that really sounds like. That adds a little chorus sound. Let's turn that up. That's kind of a crazy one, but if we back that off, it's not as crazy. It just creates a little sound at the beginning of the sound to give it character. And you can mess with the pitch of VCO2 to make it a little more overt or chorusy. We might want to adjust a little bit. Okay, so that's pretty obnoxious, but let's back it off. So once you back that VCO2 off, that a transient becomes less ridiculously overt and obnoxious and more usable. And it just becomes a slight characteristic of the sound. So you have a relatively basic sawtooth wave, but it has this nice little attack. And then let's say you want to bring the filter into it. So you can see why I'm calling this clicking. You're actually adding an attack click to this by doing these cute tricks. So it's just kind of a joke. Okay, so let's add the filter envelope in. Now the filter envelope has to obey its own, the filter is obeying this envelope here that's also controlling the pitch. So the filter then is going to take on a little bit of the behavior of the pitch. And of course you can adjust the amount of that or the intensity of it to give it a little more of a sound at the beginning. And that gives you, I mean, when I hear this, I don't think analog synthesizer because it's just not the most common function in analog synthesizers. And to be able to do it really broadens out your scope.